Hello, Five Reasons friends. Welcome back to another edition of the Marlins Report. I think that's how we're going to call this Marlins Talk. I don't know. We're still figuring it out, depending on the sponsor, I guess. But anyway, we're talking about the Marlins, the Miami Marlins today, and especially about the bullpen. The Marlins continue to make some moves. They're not big splash moves, but they're still doing something to try to get the best team possible out there on the field for opening day, which is going to be later this week. We're getting there. We're only a couple of days away from it. As usual, I'm here with David Fernandez. David, how are you? First, welcome back. And then, how do you feel about these particular moves that the Marlins made? Who are these guys? Why are we continuing to trade with the Baltimore Orioles? I don't get it, but you're going to have a better answer to that question than maybe I have it right now in my mind.
Hey Alejandro, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be back. Good to talk some more Marlins baseball as we're getting closer to opening day
Yeah.
on Friday, and it's a big week for the whole franchise, right? Because Jacksonville, the AAA team, gets started tomorrow, actually, and they've got a monster outfield, plus some of the better pitchers in the organization, right?
Right.
But the you're right. The Marlins made another trade with the Orioles. They did that yesterday. It came through yesterday in the relatively early evening, I think.
Yeah.
And they landed a couple of experienced bullpen arms in this deal. Not like, as you said, not a splashy name in there, right? This wasn't the trade for like Craig Kimbrell, for example,
Right.
a name that everybody recognizes. But these two guys have major league experience. They have plenty of experience. One of them has experience closing games, which is going to be beneficial here for the Marlins early on in the season at the very least. And they both have, team control, and they've got good stuff. I mean, are there issues with them? Do they have some shortcomings in their game? Yeah, but at that point you're hoping for the Marlins setup, Mel Stottlemyre specifically, getting his hands on these guys and turning them into major contributors for this team. And we've seen him do that, right? And even with guys from Baltimore, like Richard Blyer came over from Baltimore and has been a very good piece out of their bullpen. They they
That's
took
right.
Zach Pop as a Rule 5 draft pick. He was another former Oriole. They sent him down to AAA this week, though. But these are guys that are going to help, and these are guys that are going to help right away.
Yeah. So we talked about it last time we did this Marlins report that maybe the Marlins were not very fond of the idea of really spending that much money in relievers. I mean, their experience has been that not anybody, but good relief pitchers are gonna get it done when it gets to that point. Even though in a couple of the past seasons we did lose a lot of games because of the bullpen. I mean, the bullpen couldn't just keep the same pace that the starting rotation is hard. I mean, you have Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, Trevor Rogers at a great level, and it's going to be hard to actually pitch better than these guys. But I mean, as a Marlins fan, you have to be thinking, okay, they're making moves, maybe not what I'm expecting, but the question is, can they compete with this bullpen? Is this bullpen better than the other bullpens in the National League East, for example? What do you think?
Well, I mean, can they compete with this bullpen? I think the answer to that question is yes, but
Okay.
not by itself, right? Obviously, it's the combination of everything that they've done this offseason, right? They've locked in, some of the best starting pitching in the division for sure, right? Especially now that DeGrom is going to be out until what, early June, you know? Um,
With Jacob DeGrom, I don't know. I just say he's gonna be out, and we'll see.
yeah.
Sadly, because as a baseball fan, you want to see him pitch, but
Yeah,
it is
no,
what it is.
absolutely. I completely agree. But when you look at it as a whole, they're better than they were last year, right? And they have a more potent lineup. We've seen that this spring when Mattingly has put together like the best bats as that he can. They've done some things, right?
Yeah.
Are the overall numbers in spring like eye popping? No, right? But it's spring training.
I mean, they've been good in spring training a couple of years in a row, and that doesn't translate to the season anyway.
Right.
So
It doesn't always mean anything. It's small sample So, but when you combine what's going on with the starting rotation, the upgrades to the lineup, and now you look at what they're doing with the bullpen, you start to see that there's a path for this team to make the playoffs, right? You have to remember, we have an expanded playoff group for this season, right? So there are more spots available.
Yeah.
They're going to be contending for one of those wild card spots, hopefully. And who knows if things break right, maybe they do make a run at the division. It's unlikely. It's a long shot, right? But never say never, right? But this is a team that's built to compete for a playoff spot this year, and then obviously by not making one of those like franchise altering blockbuster trades, right? Sending out some of the high end prospects, for, to Pittsburgh for Brian Reynolds, for example.
Right.
What they're telling us is they want to compete now, but they also want to compete going forward, right? They want to keep this window open because some of those guys are getting closer and closer to the major leagues. We're probably going to see Max Meyer at some point this season. We're definitely going to see Cabrera at some point this season. Maybe
Right.
JJ Bleday makes his debut later in the summer or towards the end of the year. So some of these guys are ready to contribute or getting close to, the being able to contribute at the major league level. So when you take all of these moves, as a whole, I do think that this team is ready to compete this season. As far as the bullpen specifically, adding Cole Sulser and Tanner Scott upgrades what they had, earlier last week, right? Those two guys are major league pitchers. Those two guys have experience. Those two guys have really solid stuff. And they are better than some of the other guys that were in the mix for some of these bullpen roles. So, the bullpen is better right now than it was at this time, Saturday afternoon or whatever you want to say.
Right. So we'll see. We'll see how it works, and if the pitching is there, and if the hitting is there to help also this team win more games. According to all the websites that are really specialized in predicting these type of situations, the Marlins are going to win a lot of more games than they did last season,
Yeah.
based on
Yeah,
saber
I think,
matrix and numbers and everything.
yeah, Fangraphs had them at like plus 15 wins or something like that. And that was
Yes.
probably before the trade. So
Yeah.
maybe it's gone up even more. Who knows?
So they are. I guess they're more optimistic than some of us are here in South Florida. I guess, I mean, there've been so many moves, and at this point, you don't really know what to expect from this movement. So, okay, let's read a couple of comments here. Kubiche047 says, Saludos familia, Baltimore. We'll see what happens, right? Yes, we'll see what happens there. And yeah, we've been great in spring and not so much in the regular season, so staying positive. Every time a new season starts, you always think, why not? Maybe this team can compete for even for a wild card spot in the East. And we saw what happened last year with the Atlanta Braves.
Yep.
Their team got dismantled. They built it again in the middle of the season,
Yeah.
and they competed, and they won the World Series with a great relief pitching staff. That has to be said. That was a key moment there. And one of the guys that we have now, Jorge Soler, was a key element of that offense as well. So, I mean, I see the pitching staff, and the thing is, with the names that you mentioned that are going to be in Jacksonville, and you're going to be close to it, and maybe take a look at how they're doing over there. The thing is, looking around the league, I see so many prospects making the opening day roster in different capacities. And I thought, I mean, why not go with all your arms that you have and have some of them in the bullpen? And maybe if somebody steps down, bring him up. But I guess they want to see them as a starting guys in the minors, and trying to keep that option available there. And in case you have to trade somebody either for the minors, I mean, from the minors or from the big team to get more offense at some point of the season, you do have that guy working and getting his reps down in the minor league system. But at some point, the Marlins are going to have to make that big move. I mean, almost every championship team in the last couple of years have done it. And you always need something, and you always need big names and to try to get to that particular level to try to compete in this league. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, well, listen, I think they've put themselves into position to do just that, right?
Yeah.
If they overperform, early in the season, right? It's a tough schedule to start. April is not an easy month for the Marlins, but if they can get through some of those difficult series early on, if they can, tread water, come out above 500, which is very possible considering the starting rotation and the lineup. things soften up a little bit in June for them, and then once we get into the summer, who knows, right? If they make a run in the summer, they'll have the prospect capital in order to go out and make one of those franchise changing trades if they want to at that point. That was one of the keys to this trade. They didn't really give up anything,
Major, yeah.
mind blowing, right? The two prospects that they sent over to Boston, I'm sorry, Baltimore,
Yeah.
were low level relatively in terms of like the rankings. Baseball America had the outfielder Kevin Guerrero, who they
Mm-hmm.
traded as the 29th overall prospect in the Marlins system, and they had Velez, the starting pitcher that they sent over, as the number 34 prospect in the system. Neither of those guys were going to help the Marlins this season.
No.
Velez is a 25-year-old. He's a starter, but he hasn't pitched higher than Double A. We've seen some guys go straight from Double A in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was on a non-contending team. This is a team that wants to contend, that wants to win. And Velez, he's not even among the names that we would talk about in terms of the starting pitching prospects, right? He's a good pitcher. He's got a great changeup. He went undrafted, because of the COVID shortened draft in 2020.
Right.
Local guy from Miami, went to Florida State. He's got a future, right? He might even help the Orioles this season at some point, right? But the Orioles are completely rebuilding, right?
The
And
Orioles have been rebuilding for like 10 years. I don't even know how many years already.
it's been a while for Baltimore. But the other guy that they sent over was Guerrero, who's 17 years old. He's
Right.
years and years away from potentially contributing to a major league team, right? And then they sent a draft pick and the infamous player to be named later, right? So
yeah, which sometimes, you don't know what can come out of there.
yeah, but you would imagine it's probably some low-level minor league guy that
Yeah,
will sort of finish out this transaction. This is a win now move for the Marlins, right? And they're bringing in two guys with major league experience, and I don't think that we can underplay what that means for this bullpen, for this team, what the front office sees, right? They're not using these prospects in the bullpen. They don't want to use Meyer. They don't want to use Cabrera in the bullpen because they want to groom them as starters, right? They see the franchise sees those guys as starters. Now, some scouts think that Max Meyer will eventually be in the bullpen, that Max Meyer could eventually be a closer. And maybe he is, right? But that's not how the Marlins are approaching it right now. What they're
No.
doing is they're grooming those guys to be starters. And as we can see with the Mets, you need more than 5 starting pitchers in order to compete because DeGrom goes down, and that's obviously a huge blow to their starting rotation. For the Marlins, if one of those frontline guys goes down, God forbid, Sandy, Pablo, Trevor, one of those guys is out for an extended period of time, we know that those prospects are ready to contribute at this point in time. And then putting them in Jacksonville allows them to continue that development without the added pressure of having to produce at the major league level. Now, there's something to be said for pressure, right? But it gives them a chance to work on some of those things that, maybe they need to develop before they can really be successful at the next level, which is kind of, I think, what they're doing with Brian De La Cruz as well, sending him to Jacksonville so that he could play every day in center field.
Right.
So that when they need a fourth outfielder, when they need somebody to come up and contribute, he knows what he's doing out there. At least that's what I've sort of convinced myself at this point.
Yeah, I thought De La Cruz was going to make the team, but I
So did
guess, he's probably going to come up sometime soon whenever he needs it. We're going to talk about the roster, the full roster, later in the week, whenever we have it with the actual final roster for the Marlins. Reviewing and talking, you talked about the maybe injuries. Pablo Lopez, Eliezer Hernandez have been dealing with injuries in the last couple of years, so that's maybe something that they also are keeping in mind to try to compete this season, to have those arms to really compete and not just bring somebody up from Double A just to fill up because you don't have anybody else.
Just to go with that, how different is it going to be to have Edward Cabrera taking a spot start or have Max Meyer taking a spot start instead of it being, Daniel Castano or, Cody Poteet, who may end up in the bullpen, by the way. They might be the long relievers, right? And they're good to go for the most part. But there's a huge gap between those players, right? So it keeps the Marlins competitive. It keeps them in the race, in the running. And it's something that, again, I think the front office views this team as potentially a playoff team, which is why they go and they make a move like that, right? Because
Yeah.
Solcer is going to help the back end of the bullpen right away. Floro is going to be on the IL. And so Mattingly gets to decide between, I don't know, Anthony Bender, Solcer, who else? Blyer, if there's a bunch of lefties,
Yeah.
Bass, although I really hope not. But
But
it gives
he did pitch better after the first month.
he
So
did, he did. But it gives Mattingly that, that wiggle room, right? The other guy,
right.
Scott, he's probably not going to be a high leverage guy right off the bat. But he's got nasty stuff. He just has control issues. He's got command issues. Way too many walks for him. So he's probably a middle reliever. And if Mel Stottlemyre can work his magic, he's somebody that has a high ceiling because of his stuff, right? And he's relatively young. I think he's 27.
Yeah, look at this. This is from the Marlins, their email that they sent with the information about this trade. He says Scott ranked third among left-handed relievers in whiff percentage, 36.8%, trailing only behind Josh Hader and Aroldis Chapman, which are not bad names to be trailing, right?
Yeah.
And he also ranked sixth in the Major League Baseball among lefties in average fastball velocity with 97 miles per hour in 2021. So there you go. That's what really drew the attention from the Marlins. Of course, we were like, "Who's this? Who are these two guys?" But I
Yeah.
mean, they have a reason to make
Well,
these
they have a
moves.
spy in Baltimore, obviously.
Yeah, they have something going on there. And Solser, on the other hand, he's 32. He's a little more experienced. That's why I think he's going to be the closer because of that experience and also having done this before in the Major League Baseball level. He finished the season with 5.4, 2.70 ERA, and 73 strikeouts in 63 innings, so a good ratio there. He was one of the 23 right-handed relievers to pitch in more than 60 innings, strike out at least 60 hitters, and have an ERA under 3 last season, joining our well-known Dylan Floro on that list. So there you go. Those are
Yeah.
the reasons why these guys are here to try to compete with the Marlins and trying to be
Yeah.
one of the teams fighting for that NL East division this year.
These guys are upgrades with the arms that were there. Solcer, again, he had 8 saves last year. He was probably going to be the Orioles closer this year. I mean, I don't know if Mattingly taps him as the closer right away. I think
Mm-hmm.
probably goes with Bender first, so makes him kind of a setup guy. But
Yeah.
he's somebody who his metrics across the board, they look pretty good. When you look at his stuff from like Baseball Savant. And the other guy, Tanner Scott, again, a huge strikeout rate, but you worry a little bit about the walks, which is why he's probably more of a middle reliever at this point until Stottlemyre can figure out how to get him to not throw the ball all over the place.
Right. A couple of years ago, we would have said he's the lefty specialist that the Marlins have there in the bullpen. Not now, unless you have one or two or three guys coming in.
They have 4 lefties in the bullpen right now. It
Yeah.
looks like they're going to break camp with 4 lefties, which is crazy. They're going to have Blyer, Scott, and then Stephen O'Court, and probably their non-roster invitee Grant Dayton. It seems like he's going to make the team too. Those are all lefties, so Mattingly can get a cute, I guess, with matchups and things. Although there's the 3 batter minimum still. So
yeah, that rule still applies for this season. That's probably one of the rules that nobody's talked about because there's so many changes this year,
yeah,
or proposed changes because not all of them really went through. So you talked about the schedule real quick before we go. San Francisco is going to be the first series, all this away. Then the Los Angeles Angels for a couple of games. So 5 games over there in California to start the season. Then they're going to come here next Thursday to play a 4-game series against the Philadelphia Phillies. Right away, the first time we see a division rival right there. Then the St. Louis Cardinals for 3 games. And then we travel to Atlanta and Washington and finish up the month here facing the Seattle Mariners. So there you go. That's what the Marlins are going to be facing in this first month of the season, the month of April. We are going to be there on Thursday, hoping the Marlins give us the credentials, right? So we're going to be there on Thursday for that game on the 14th against the Philadelphia Phillies. So thank you, David. It was a pleasure as usual, and thank you very much, guys. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. Give it a thumbs up, a like. This helps us to keep building our community here. There's an episode of Man on Second. They also talked about all the moves that the Marlins are doing right now and preparing for the start of the season. So check it out here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel, and we will be back soon, David, with more information and already with the full roster to really discuss how they're going to build it out, what the lineup should look like, and the start rotation and the relievers and all of that all together as we prepare for this 22 Major League Baseball regular season. Have a good night, David. Thank you very much, and we'll see you later here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Bye bye.
Thanks, Alejandro. Bye, everybody.